My life took a turn on the evening of the 14th of December, which was my wife's company Christmas party. I had gone to several of these parties over the years and usually enjoyed meeting her coworkers. This year felt different, though. My wife, Julie, really tried to convince me not to go at all. At the party, I noticed she was focused on one coworker in particular, ignoring everyone else, including me. I was sitting alone with my drink when the bank's president, Guy Samuels, came over and asked if I was having a good time. I told him, "Not really. Who is that guy standing with Julie?" Guy looked where I pointed and said, "That's Julie's new boss, Chad Simmons." He then asked, "You don't think there's anything going on between them, do you? Our bank has strict rules against that. Getting caught in a situation like that could cost them their jobs, so I doubt they would risk it." I replied, "Just because there are rules doesn't mean people will follow them. I hope you're right, but I'm pretty sure those two are more than friends." She looks at him the way she used to look at me when we were dating. I think she's in love with him now. Guy gave me a sympathetic look and said, "Sam, I hope you're wrong. Chad is married with 2 young kids. I'm actually surprised his wife isn't here." I said, "He probably didn't tell her about the party. Julie tried really hard to talk me out of coming tonight. Sometimes I wish I had stayed home and not found out what's really happening, but here I am." Guy stood up, patted my shoulder, and said, "I hope you're wrong about them." Then he walked away to talk to others. I continued to watch my wife and Chad, feeling quite hurt. Finally, Julie glanced at me and offered a small smile, but as she saw my expression, she turned red for a moment and returned her attention to Chad. In the 3 hours I spent at the party, Julie spent only around half an hour with other coworkers, about 15 minutes with me, and the rest of the time giving her full attention to Chad. I decided I had seen enough, so I walked up to them and said, "I think it's time for us to head home. Unless you want to stay, maybe this gentleman can give you a ride. I don't think we've met. I'm Sam Butler, Julie's husband." I extended my hand for a shake, and Chad took it, saying, "Chad Simmons, nice to meet you." I'd be glad to give Julie a ride home if she wanted. Julie's eyes lit up and she said, "Are you sure you don't mind? I'm having a great time and don't want to leave yet. Whatever you prefer, dear. I'll see you later, but don't stay out too late." I gave Julie a light kiss on the cheek and turned to go. As I picked up my coat, I guessed I was pretty sure about those two being together in a special way. I walked to my car, started the engine to warm it up, and decided to wait and see what they would do next. An hour later, the party ended, and people started walking to the parking lot. I had moved my car to a shadowy spot for a better view. I noticed Chad's car was parked just beside mine. I watched them walking toward his car, holding hands like young lovers. I began recording with my cell phone as they approached. When they reached the car, Chad opened the door for Julie and held her in his arms. They shared a kiss, and I caught a glimpse of them through my open window. To my surprise, Julie didn't push Chad away. Instead, she seemed happy in his arms. When they broke apart, Julie said, "I love you so much, Chad." "I love you too, Jules. When do you think we can see each other again? I really want to." Sam has to go on another trip to the headquarters soon. He usually leaves for a few nights, so we'll have time together. Let me know as soon as you find out. They leaned in for another kiss. I had heard enough and started my car, making them rush into Chad's vehicle. I drove away quietly and headed home. When I got home, I thought about our daughter Lizzie, who was unaware of the troubles coming our way. I checked her room and saw she was sound asleep. I then went to my home office, powered up my computer, and began looking into Chad Simmons. Working from home for a computer security company gave me access to many databases not available to everyone. I was doing some research when Julie came home about an hour later. I went to the living room as she walked in and noticed her lips looked a bit red. Her cheeks had some marks, and her hair was slightly messy. I told her Lizzie was asleep and that I planned to work a little before bed. I turned around and walked back into my office, closing the door behind me. I was surprised that she came home in that state. I sat down and started planning how to leave my unhappy marriage. My first step was to tell Julie that I needed to fly to New York in a few days for work. I didn't really plan to go anywhere, but I wanted to see what Julie and Chad were doing while I wasn't around. I decided to buy some small cameras and place them around the house to record what happened when I was away. I also thought about renting a car to make it easier to follow my wife and her friend. I waited to go to bed until I was sure Julie was asleep since I didn't want to have any interaction with her. The next day was Sunday, and I told Julie about my trip to New York on Wednesday for a few days. I noticed a brief smile on her face when she heard I was leaving. Most of that day, I worked around the house, getting ready for the time I would ask my wife to leave. I bought new locks for the house from the hardware store to install when the time came. Lizzie spent the day at a friend's house doing typical activities for an 18-year-old. I had a close relationship with her because I was always home due to my job. I helped her with homework, talked about her school problems, and took her out on weekends when she wasn't busy with friends. On Monday, after Julie went to work, I set up the small cameras I had bought and connected them to my computer. I placed the cameras in our bedroom, living room, kitchen, and even got one in the hallway. I wanted to be sure she wasn't being unfaithful in our home. On Tuesday, I met with a divorce lawyer to learn about my options. I discovered that my state did not allow for a no-fault divorce, which meant I could file for divorce based on infidelity as long as I could prove it. If I could, I might not have to pay spousal support. Since Lizzie was already 18, there wouldn't be any issues with child custody. Given what I witnessed at the Christmas party, I figured it would be straightforward since they were not careful. I told my lawyer I wanted a divorce without holding back, and that I wanted to make things difficult for both of them. The house had been left to me by my grandparents, so it wasn't part of our marriage. Besides the house, our belongings included a savings account with about $30,000, what we had in checking, and our individual retirement accounts. After meeting with the lawyer, I opened a separate checking account in my name only and moved all of our joint funds into it. I also canceled our joint credit cards, paid them off, and created a new credit account just for me. Additionally, I started new cell service for Lizzie and me, planning to leave our original service until I had solid proof of what was going on. On Tuesday night, I packed as if I were going to work. It was hard to stay calm around Julie. I didn't understand why she didn't love me anymore and why she was with another man. I had always thought we had a perfect marriage. We rarely argued, didn't have money issues, and our intimate life seemed good, even though it had quieted down recently. We also had Lizzie. On Wednesday, I woke up, made breakfast for Lizzie, and got her ready for school, just like usual. After she left, I said goodbye to Julie and told her I would see her when I returned on Friday or Saturday. She waved and told me she loved me. I responded that I loved her too and left without even a kiss. I wondered if I was misreading things, but Julie seemed eager for me to go. I drove to the airport, parked my car, and then went to pick up my rental car. I had found Chad Simmons' address during my research, so I parked near his home to see what he would do. Shortly after, I saw Chad get into his car and drive away. I followed him to the bank where he and Julie worked. Since he seemed to be staying put for a while, I walked to a nearby Starbucks and got a coffee and pastry before returning to my car. Around 2:30, I noticed Chad return to his car with a big smile. I suspected where he was heading, and sure enough, it was my house. As he approached the front door, I saw Julie open it for him. She threw her arms around him and kissed him in front of our neighbors. They were being very open about their affection. I wondered about this change in Julie, as she usually kept her feelings more private. I stayed in my car for a long time, making sure my cameras captured everything before I decided to confront them. I thought an hour would be enough for things to take their course, so when the time was up, I walked into the house. It didn't take long to hear them. They weren't exactly being quiet. Julie and I used to be noisy too, back before Lizzie came along. Since then, we had to be more careful, unlike these two. I went upstairs, holding up my phone to record just in case I needed it later. The bedroom door was wide open. What I saw made my stomach twist. Julie was on her knees, her hands tied to the posts of our bed. Chad was with her in a way that felt like a betrayal, especially because she never allowed that with me. She was yelling out things no one should ever hear, especially about being with him instead of me. I couldn't take it anymore. I shouted, shocked and angry. Then everything got worse. I heard Lizzie scream behind me. She had seen what was happening. Chad jumped back and scrambled to get his clothes on. I rushed to Lizzie, pulled her close, and turned her away from it all. My heart sank. I knew this moment would haunt her for a long time. I told Chad to get out of my house before I lost control. He didn't argue. He grabbed his things and ran. I wanted to hit him, but I held myself back. I focused on Lizzie instead, telling her to go to her room. I promised I'd check on her soon. She was crying so hard, and it was breaking me inside. She might need help after all this. Julie looked embarrassed and afraid, trying to cover herself even though she was still tied up. Tears ran down her face as she said, "It's not what you think, Sam, really." I put my phone away and stepped toward her. My voice was heavy with anger. "You don't even know what I'm thinking, but go ahead. Tell me, what should I be thinking right now?" Julie kept crying. "It was a mistake. He came on to me. I didn't want this. I love you. I'd never betray you." I couldn't believe it. Just moments earlier, she had been shouting how much she loved him. I told her I was done. I was tired of the lies. I said when I untied her, she needed to grab her things and leave for good. I didn't want her near me or our daughter ever again. I reminded her she hadn't even cared that Lizzie could walk in on them. I untied her, then told her to leave. She sobbed and asked, "Where am I supposed to go?" I looked at her and said coldly, "That's not my problem. You don't live here anymore. Go stay with Chad for all I care. He can take care of you now." Julie looked at me and asked, "Wait, I thought you were going to New York. Why are you here?" I replied, "I never planned to go to New York. I saw the way you were looking at Chad at the Christmas party, and it was clear you had feelings for him. I even recorded you kissing and saying you loved him in the parking lot after the party. That was all I needed to see to know I could end things with you. Get a good lawyer because I'm going to make sure you don't get much in the divorce. I plan to make life difficult for you and Chad. I will also try to keep Lizzie away from you after what happened today. Now get dressed and leave." Once Julie was gone, I went to Lizzie's room. I stood at her door for a moment, taking deep breaths and thinking about what to say. I decided to just comfort her, so I knocked, entered her room, sat on her bed, and hugged her. "I'm so sorry you had to see that, Lizzie. It's my fault. I was upset and didn't think about you coming home from school. Can you forgive me?" Through her tears, Lizzie said, "It's not your fault, Dad. Why was she with that man? Your mother doesn't love me anymore and chose to be with him instead. I'm not sure why she stopped loving me, but she met someone else she liked more. It doesn't mean she doesn't love you. She has a strange way of showing it. I came home right after you, and I saw her bedroom door was open. She must not have thought about me at all today." With that, Lizzie started to cry hard again. I hugged her tightly and whispered kind words to her. Finally, I said, "We will always have each other." Lizzie looked up, smiled through her tears, and said, "Yes, we will always have each other. I love you, Dad." "I love you too, Lizzie. How about we get something to eat and drink and talk about what's next for us? Does that sound good?" Lizzie nodded and stood up. We held hands as we walked to the kitchen. I made us grilled cheese sandwiches and poured apple juice. We sat down to talk. "I have a lot to do in the coming days because of what your mom did. After that, I think we should take a vacation during Christmas break." "What do you have to do?" she asked. "Firstly, I need to change the locks on the doors so your mom can come into our house anymore. I need to speak with my divorce lawyer to start the process. I also need to talk to your mom's boss and the wife of the man your mom was with to tell them about what happened." "So, where should we go on vacation?" Lizzie thought for a moment and said, "Can we go to London and Paris?" I was surprised by her choice. I thought she would suggest Disneyland or Hawaii. She had a passport from our trip to Canada a couple of years ago, so I said, "Sure, we can go to London and Paris." "Why those places?" Lizzie giggled and replied, "I've always wanted to visit those cities, and I think we should get away from that woman." I smiled and said, "You're pretty smart. I'll book our flights and hotels tonight." That night, after making the arrangements, I checked the videos I recorded with the mini cameras. The quality was amazing. As soon as I left the house, I heard Julie on the phone with Chad telling him she was sick and wanted him to come over. I fast-forwarded to when he arrived, watching her greet him and lead him to the bedroom. I was annoyed as I watched, realizing that she seemed more interested in him than in our relationship. After reviewing the video, I decided to make several edited copies to show to Guy Samuels at the bank they worked in, one for Chad's wife, one for my lawyer, and some for her parents and friends to quickly explain why I was getting a divorce. The next morning, I called Guy and asked him to meet me at the Starbucks where I had gotten my coffee the day before. I had something important to show him. He agreed to meet in half an hour. I bought him a coffee, sat him down, and played the video for him. He looked very upset as he watched it. I said, "I told you so." When the video ended, he said, "I will go back and let them go right away. I'm really sorry this happened to you. I know you cared for your wife a lot and you must be feeling terrible." "Thanks, Guy. Yes, I'm hurting a lot, but I need a favor. Can you wait to let them go until I serve Julie with her divorce papers at work? Also, is Chad at work now? I'll gladly wait to let them go. It gives me time to find replacements. And yes, he is at work right now. Why do you ask?" "Because I want to share this video with his wife so she can make an informed choice." Guy nodded and said, "That's fair. Good luck, Sam. What's next for you and Lizzie?" "She wants to go to London and Paris, so we leave on Saturday. If you need to reach me, this is my cell number." I gave him my number and then went to see my lawyer. Next, I told my attorney that I had my proof and wanted to divorce Julie using a strong approach. I asked if it was possible to have her served at work on Friday. He assured me that it would be taken care of. I also mentioned that Lizzie and I were going to Europe for Christmas break and would return on January 5th. If he needed to contact me, he could call my cell phone. As I left, he expressed his sympathy about my marriage ending. I thanked him for his concern and exited his office. The last thing on my list was to speak with Chad's wife. I wasn't looking forward to this visit, but I felt it was my duty to share the information with her. I rang the doorbell, and after a few moments, a kind-looking woman answered the door. "Yes, may I help you?" "Hi, my name is Sam Butler. Are you Mrs. Simmons?" She nodded. "I'm afraid I have some bad news for you." She looked worried but didn't say anything, so I continued. "To be straightforward, your husband and my wife have been having an affair for some time. May I come in for a moment?" She welcomed me into their living room and told me to make myself comfortable. I sat on the couch and placed my laptop on the coffee table. She then asked, "So, do you have proof of their affair?" "Yes, I do. I might as well start from the beginning. Do you have about an hour to talk, Mrs. Simmons?" "Simmons? I have all day until Chad comes home. Please call me Alice." I smiled and said, "Okay, Alice. You can call me Sam." So on December 14th, the bank had its annual Christmas party. I went, even though my wife wanted me to stay home so I wouldn't be bored. I noticed that she and your husband were spending a lot of time together. She looked at him the way she used to look at me when we first fell in love. It was upsetting. I left the party early, telling my wife I was going home. Then I parked my car in a quiet spot and waited to see what would happen when they left. Here is what I saw. I played a video I recorded on my phone in the parking lot. Alice watched in shock as the couple kissed and declared their feelings for each other. She started to cry, so I put my arm around her to comfort her. Once she settled down, I said, "After that, I decided I needed proof of what was happening. I set up tiny cameras in my house, hoping they would meet there. I told my wife I needed to go to my home office for a few days, but really, I stayed in town. As soon as I left, my wife called your husband to meet at our house. I followed him to his office and then to my home. I waited outside for an hour, then went inside and caught them together. I recorded my approach and what I found on my phone, and that video is also on this thumb drive. Just a warning, the footage is very revealing." I took the thumb drive from my computer and handed it to Alice, saying, "I'm really sorry you had to find out about your husband like this, but you deserve to know the truth. If you need anything, please feel free to call me." I gave her the name of my lawyer and told her he could help her. I added that I planned to make things difficult for them. "I do have one favor to ask, Alice. I want to have Julie served with papers on Friday at the bank, and I thought it would be smart to have Chad served at the same time. If you could call my lawyer now and set things up, that would be great. They will also lose their jobs on Friday, so I suggest you take any savings and checking money you have and open accounts in just your name. You might want to get checked for STDs, just in case your husband or my wife has been with other people without using protection," I said. I packed up my laptop and stood up to leave. Alice got up too and said, "Thank you for thinking of me. You'll call your lawyer as soon as you go. I will definitely get checked, even though we haven't been together for over a year. He just lost interest in me. I think my kids and I will go to my mom's house tonight. Anyway, I'll keep in touch." I mentioned that Lizzie and I were going to Europe, so I asked her to keep track of the time differences for us. Next, I went to my doctor and told him I needed to be tested for STDs and asked him to text me the results. With that done, I turned my attention to my house. I changed the locks on the doors, called the post office to stop our mail while Lizzie and I were away, and asked a friend to watch the place until we returned. Then I drove to the school to pick up Lizzie as I had arranged with her in the morning. I arrived just as school was getting out and saw Lizzie being approached by Julie, who tried to hug her. Lizzie pushed Julie away and shouted, "How could you hurt Daddy like that? Why were you with another man? I don't want to see you again!" I rushed over to Lizzie, pushed Julie aside, and hugged her tightly. I turned to Julie and said, "Stay away from us. We will talk later about when you can see her, but for now, just go." We had quite a few people watching us as I led Lizzie to my car. Once we got home, I asked her, "Are you okay?" She nodded with a smile, so I added, "I have a couple of things for you. First, here's our new house key because I changed the locks today. Second, this cell phone is for emergencies and to call me. Okay?" Lizzie smiled and replied, "Yes, Dad. I promise to use it only for emergencies." Finally, Friday arrived. It was the day that Julie and Chad would receive divorce papers, and they would lose their jobs. After it happened, my attorney called to tell me that once the papers were served and the bank president let them go, chaos broke out. They yelled at each other, blaming one another for their mess, and had to be escorted off the property by security. That evening, while Lizzie and I were packing for our trip to Europe, the doorbell rang repeatedly. I looked at Lizzie and said, "I'm guessing that's your mother. I think it's best if you don't listen to our conversation because it might get a bit loud, but you're old enough to decide for yourself." Lizzie nodded as I left the room. When I opened the door, Julie looked at me with anger in her eyes. She shouted, "Why did you get me fired from my job? How am I supposed to live?" If Julie's eyes were on fire, mine felt like they were shooting daggers. "I didn't get you fired, you did. At the Christmas party, I pointed out that you and your friend were probably not being truthful, and someone mentioned that the workplace has rules about that. As for your living situation, it's not my concern anymore. You can go stay with that person you chose over me. You're not my problem now. Please leave my property, or I will call the police." Julie yelled back, "This is my home, too. Not anymore. We don't want you here." "How could you do this?" Just then, a police car pulled up with flashing lights. I was just as surprised as Julie when the officer approached the door. Someone named Elizabeth reported that a Julie Butler has violated a restraining order. He looked at Julie and asked, "Are you Julie Butler?" She nodded, and he continued, "You need to leave now. If you do not leave, I will have to take you into custody. If you come back here while the order is in place, you could face serious consequences. Do you understand?" Julie nodded, tears filling her eyes, and then she turned and left. The officer then asked, "May I speak with Elizabeth, please?" Lizzie stepped out from behind me and replied, "Yes?" The officer looked at my daughter and asked, "Did you report this situation?" "Yes. I don't want her around us. She hurt my dad and me." The officer looked at her for a moment and then said, "You did the right thing. Don't hesitate to call us if you need help." As the officer left, I asked Lizzie, "Why did you tell him we had a restraining order when we don't?" "Well, for 2 reasons. First, I never want to see her again. And second, I was worried you might get into trouble. I care about you, Dad, and I don't want anything to happen to you." I hugged Lizzie tightly and said, "Thank you. I love you too. I know I was angry, but I would never hurt a woman, even though I sometimes want to shake some sense into your mother. Now let's finish packing. Are you excited about our trip?" "I'm really excited, but we need to change one thing." "What's that?" "I don't want you to call that woman my mother. You can call her that woman, her or something else, but she's not my mother anymore." I considered her words and realized I should think about getting Lizzie some help. He'll take care of that as soon as we get back. The next day, Lizzie and I sat together in the business class of a United 787. Lizzie was full of excitement and shared all the things she wanted to do. In London, I want to see the Tower of London, Westminster Abbey, St. Paul's Cathedral, the National Gallery, and watch the changing of the guard. I laughed and replied, "That sounds like a lot of fun. What about Paris?" In Paris, I want to visit the Louvre, the Musée d'Orsay, the Eiffel Tower, the Champs-Élysées, and just take walks around, she said. What do you want to see? I felt so much love for my daughter. She cared about what I wanted too. I hadn't really thought about it. I was just planning to go where you wanted. I want this trip to be amazing for you. But Dad, I want you to have fun too. I'll have fun just being with you, and I'm sure I'll find things I want to do. Do you promise? I promise. Heathrow was a bit tiring with long lines at immigration. Luckily, the lines for those in the better seats were much shorter. After getting through, I stopped at an ATM to withdraw several £100s. Then we hopped on the Heathrow-Paddington train, which is a direct ride into the city. Friends had said it was worth the cost because taking the tube would be a long, dull trek with lots of reminders to mind the gap. Once we reached Paddington, we carried our bags to the tube station and took the Bakerloo line to Embankment. We then walked several blocks to our hotel near Trafalgar Square. It was still early in the morning, so we couldn't check into our room yet. We decided to leave our luggage and explore for a bit. We enjoyed watching people in Trafalgar Square, then walked down Whitehall St, which is at the heart of the British government. We could see Downing St, where the Prime Minister lives. We continued to Westminster, where we saw the Houses of Parliament, the Tower of Big Ben, and Westminster Abbey. We stopped for fish and chips, which were delicious. Afterward, we decided to return by the other side of the River Thames. We took a ride on the London Eye, the giant Ferris wheel, and enjoyed the view. By the end of the ride, I noticed Lizzie was getting tired and needed a rest, so we went back to the hotel. When we returned, our room was finally ready. We put away our bags, and I said to Lizzie, "All right, it's 2 p.m. now. Let's take a 3-hour nap, and then we can find somewhere to have dinner. We shouldn't sleep too long because we need to adjust to the new time zone. We should try to stay awake until 10 or 11. You might want to take a shower now, too." I watched the news while Lizzie was in the bathroom. My thoughts wandered to a scene that bothered me, and I jumped a bit when Lizzie came back. I could feel my anger, but I didn't want her to notice, so I gave her a quick kiss on the forehead and went to take my shower. After I finished, I felt much better and mostly forgot about the troubling dream. I noticed Lizzie was fast asleep, so I crawled into bed after setting my alarm for 6:30 and quickly fell asleep. We had a fantastic time in London. We visited all the sites Lizzie had planned, and we even did some shopping on Regent St and around Oxford Circus. We intended to spend Christmas Day together in our hotel, but we were invited to the home of a kind clerk from our hotel whom we saw every day. Her family was very welcoming, and Lizzie and I enjoyed ourselves a lot. A couple of days after Christmas, we were on the Eurostar train heading to Paris through the tunnel. The trip was quick, taking just over 2 hours, and we arrived at the Gare du Nord, right in the center of Paris. We took the metro to Saint-Michel, and then walked a few blocks to our hotel near the Sorbonne, the University of Paris. I had spent 6 months studying there during college, so I had many happy memories of the place. I was glad Lizzie chose it for our trip. As we walked to our hotel, I shared stories from my time there and pointed out interesting places. Lizzie had been learning French in school for several years, so she wanted to use it as much as possible during our visit. I agreed, although I mentioned that my French was a bit rusty. When we checked into our hotel, I found it easier to speak the language than I had expected. After dropping our bags, we crossed the river to Ile de la Cité and explored Notre Dame for a bit. Then, we walked to the Louvre and cut through the courtyard to the Tuileries Gardens and on to the Place de la Concorde. We watched the busy traffic for a few minutes before heading to the Champs-Élysées and walked all the way up to the Arc de Triomphe. Lizzie was enjoying everything, even though it was a little cold. We found a cozy bistro for lunch and had hot tea. Lizzie loved my favorite sandwich with ham and cheese on a baguette. On our way back to the hotel, we stopped at a bakery and bought some pastries and another baguette. We also visited a cheese shop and picked out some cheese, and I bought a bottle of wine and a soda for Lizzie at a store. Then, we took all our goodies to our room and enjoyed dinner while watching French TV. Our favorite part of the TV shows was the commercials, which we thought were really funny. As we were getting ready for bed, Lizzie surprised me by jumping into my arms. She hugged me tightly and said, "Thank you, Dad. I know you're dealing with some tough things, but this trip has been great so far." I love you so much, and I wish we didn't have to go home. I kissed her forehead and replied, I love you too, sweetheart. I've enjoyed this time as well, but we can't avoid reality forever, so we will have to go back eventually. Tomorrow I thought I would show you where I attended classes, where I lived, and then we'll visit the Eiffel Tower. When Lizzie let go of me, she said, Ooh, that sounds like fun. I'm curious about when you lived here. Maybe I can do a semester abroad when I'm in college. The next morning, after we had our croissant and baguette breakfast at the hotel, Lizzie and I walked up the hill to the Sorbonne. I pointed out the different buildings, and when we reached the one I spent the most time in, Lizzie asked, Can we go inside? I'd really like to see it. I told her it would be fine, and if anyone asked, I would just say I was looking for a specific professor. We entered the building and walked through the quiet hallways since students were on holiday. While I was telling her about one of my professors, a woman approached us in the hallway. I didn't notice her until she said, Sam Butler, is that you? I looked up and recognized the lovely woman immediately. Oh my goodness, Genevieve? She smiled widely as she came over and gave me a warm hug and a friendly kiss on the cheek. It's wonderful to see you. What brings you here? I'm on holiday with my daughter. Lizzie, this is an old friend, Genevieve DeClose. Genevieve, I'd like you to meet my daughter Elizabeth, but she prefers Lizzie. Lizzie offered her hand, but Genevieve pulled her into a hug and gave her a kiss on the cheek, saying, Nice to meet you, Lizzie. You can call me Jen, okay? Lizzie smiled brightly and replied, Thank you. So you knew my dad when he was in school here? Yes, your dad and I were really good friends. I was sad when he had to go back to the States. How long will you be in Paris? We arrived yesterday and are staying for a week before I need to get Lizzie back to school. So, do you work here now? Yes, I'm an adjunct professor now. I teach medieval history and Reformation classes. Are you teaching at a university in the States? You were always so smart. When Lizzie heard that, she looked at me in surprise. I replied, I couldn't find a job in my field, so I started working with computers, and now I help a company with computer security. I also teach a few days a week at a community college to stay connected. Oh, it's too bad you didn't find a teaching job because you would have been great at it. Listen, I need to be somewhere soon, so why don't you and Lizzie come to my place for dinner tonight? I'm at 10 Rue de Mirabel, just off Rue Monge. It's a short walk up the hill. How about 7 o'clock? I glanced at Lizzie, who was smiling and nodding, so I said, We would love to. Should we bring anything? Jen laughed and answered, Just bring yourselves. Lizzie and I gave Jen 2 quick cheek kisses and said we'd see her later. Jen walked down the hall, and we watched her go. At the end of the hall, Jen turned and waved to us with a big smile, and we waved back. As Lizzie and I left, I started recalling memories of Jen from school. I had a crush on her back then, but she seemed too perfect for me. She was beautiful, friendly, and fun, but I was only in Paris for a little while, so I didn't pursue it. I didn't want to fall in love and leave, plus I didn't think I had a chance. So Jen and I stayed friends, and when I left, that was that. As I thought about those school days, I felt Lizzie pulling on my arm and heard her shout, Dad! Dad! I stopped and looked at her. She said, Dad, you were somewhere else. I called your name a few times and you didn't hear me. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I was just reminiscing. What did you want? I want to know, was Jen your girlfriend back then? She's very pretty and she seems to like you a lot. I laughed and said, No, she wasn't my girlfriend. We were just friends. And yes, she is very beautiful. She always has been. How do you know she likes me a lot? She hasn't seen me in over 20 years. She probably has her own family now. Well, when she looked at you, there was something in her eyes. I think she likes you. Plus, she wasn't wearing a ring. You're only 18. What do you know about this? You'd be surprised. I know more than you think, and I know she cares about you. You'll see? By the way, when did you start teaching at the community college? I laughed and said, I started when you began high school. I've always loved history and wanted to do something useful with my PhD. You have a PhD? I didn't know that. Why don't you go by doctor? There aren't many PhDs that teach at JC, so I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. Lizzie looked at me with curiosity and said, Who knew my dad was smart? I just laughed and pulled her close as we walked. We visited the Eiffel Tower and waited in line for about 20 minutes before getting on the elevator. Once we reached the top, the view was amazing. Lizzie pointed out things, and I tried to explain what they were, if I knew. We had a fantastic day, and as we took the metro back to our hotel, Lizzie suggested getting a bottle of wine and some flowers for General. Look, she said we didn't need to bring anything. She was just being nice. You should be kinder. How did I even exist? I had to chuckle, so we went to Boulevard Saint-Germain to a wine shop. Lizzie asked the clerk, if you were having dinner with a woman you liked and wanted to impress her, what wine would you choose? The clerk pointed us to a reasonably priced bottle of Bordeaux, so I bought it. Next, we stopped at a flower shop and picked out a beautiful bouquet before heading back to our room. Lizzie insisted we both needed to shower and dress nicely, and by the time we were ready, it was time to head to Jen's place. I couldn't help but laugh because Lizzie was very nervous, giving me advice on what to say and what not to say. I finally said, look, Lizzie, nothing big is going to happen. We'll just talk about our school days, our old friends, and what we have been doing since I left Paris. That's all. Lizzie rolled her eyes. We arrived a few minutes late and were greeted at Jen's apartment with friendly cheek kisses. I handed her the flowers and the bottle of wine, and she looked quite pleased. I glanced at Lizzie, and she gave me a knowing smile. I chuckled as we took off our coats. The delicious smell of what she was cooking filled the air as she invited us to sit in her living room. The apartment was quite spacious, so I figured we might meet her family soon. I said, you have a lovely apartment? Jen smiled and replied, thanks. It's a bit big for one person, but it's convenient for work, and many of my friends live nearby. Would you like something to drink, Lizzie? Lizzie said, you'll have whatever you and Dad are having. Jen raised her eyebrows, and I simply shrugged, so Jen said, okay, that works. Jen left the room and soon returned with a tray holding 3 glasses filled with a golden liquid, an ice cube, and a twist of orange peel. She offered the tray to Lizzie first, who took a glass, then to me, and finally she took one for herself. She lifted her glass and said, to old friends and new ones, cheers. I lifted my glass to Jen, and Lizzie followed along. We all took a sip. Jen and I watched Lizzie as she made a funny face. Once we set our glasses down, Jen asked Lizzie, so how do you like our drink? Lizzie looked at us and said, actually, it's a bit strong for me. Could you add some water? Jen poured some water into Lizzie's glass, and after another sip, she shrugged and said, that's better. I was impressed, and Jen said, I think you might have a bit of French in you. Jen and I started recalling old friends and stories from school, just like I expected. Lizzie listened quietly. After a while, Jen got up to finish dinner, and Lizzie and I offered to help while continuing our chat. The dinner was delicious, and I allowed Lizzie to have some wine since she was old enough in France. After we cleaned up, the 3 of us returned to Jen's living room to keep talking. A couple of hours later, with the little bit of wine Lizzie consumed, she began to doze off in her chair. Jen moved to the couch beside me and said, let's keep our voices down so we don't wake Lizzie. Sam, I feel like you're a bit sad these days. Do you want to share what's bothering you? I usually kept my problems to myself, but Jen and I used to talk about everything back in school. She held my hand, and it felt comforting, so I started to speak. I recently found out that my wife was seeing someone else. At her company's Christmas party, she tried to stop me from coming, and I noticed she was very interested in another man. I left early and watched from the parking lot as they kissed and expressed their feelings for each other. I decided to set up some cameras in our house while I pretended I was going away for a few days. I hadn't even made it out the door before I heard her inviting her partner to our home. Later that day, I followed him back to our place, gave them a little time, and then went inside. It was a shock to see them together in our bedroom with the door wide open. The hardest part was that Lizzie was coming home from school and saw everything. My wife was completely disregarding our daughter, only thinking about herself. I have filed for divorce and shared a video I had with the wife of the man my partner was seeing, as well as their boss. What hurts the most is that I believed we had a great marriage. We never fought, and she never mentioned any issues with our relationship. I thought she loved me like I loved her. I must have been wrong about everything. I feel betrayed and let down. I'm worried that Lizzie will always remember seeing her mother with someone else. Another thing that bothers me is that she never wanted to try some things with me that she did with him in the video. It feels like our marriage was not real, and she found someone who made her happy in ways I couldn't. I don't know. I just feel lost right now. When I looked at Jen, I saw tears rolling down her face. She wiped her eyes, hugged me, and said, "Oh, Sam, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. I was married too, but my husband cheated on me. I know this feeling that makes you think you'll never be loved again and that you failed. It took me some time to find my self-worth again. I see you as a wonderful man and an amazing father. Lizzie loves you very much. Honestly, I have always cared for you. I was heartbroken when you left Paris." I was taken aback by Jen's confession and then surprised when she kissed me gently. My heart filled with warmth. When we pulled away, I looked into Jen's eyes. They are dark and beautiful, always full of emotion. I admitted, "I've loved you too, but I was scared you wouldn't feel the same. I didn't want to risk our friendship, so I kept my feelings to myself. I always wondered how things could have been different if you were in my life." Jen smiled and replied, "You can be in my life now. We can catch up on the time lost and learn from our past mistakes." I felt a rush of joy in my heart, but then reality hit me. "Jen, I want nothing more than to be with you and build a life together, but we need to be realistic. You live here, and Lizzie and I are in the U.S. If we were together, it would be a quick change for both of us, and I'm still dealing with my divorce." "There are many challenges," Jen smiled and said. "They are only challenges if you let them be too hard to overcome. You are a strong and smart man, and you can fix any problem. I love you, Sam, and I believe you and Lizzie would be very happy living and working here." "Oh, man, I love you too, but what about Lizzie's education?" Jen laughed and said, "Lizzie is very bright, speaks French well, and has a friendly personality. She will do great here. And you, I'm sure we can ask Professor Fignon to give you a job. He talks about you often, even now. Just think about it and discuss it with Lizzie. Now I think both of you should stay the night. Lizzie can sleep with me, and you can sleep in my guest room. How does that sound?" I looked at Lizzie, who was sound asleep, and I didn't want to carry her back down the hill to our hotel, so I agreed with Jen's plan. I picked her up and followed Jen to her room. When she pulled back the covers, I gently laid Lizzie down on the bed. She opened her eyes for a moment and said, "I love you, Dad." My heart filled with love, and I told her I loved her too before kissing her forehead. I turned to leave the room, but Jen stopped me and said, "I love you too." She leaned in for a kiss. This kiss felt warm and showed how lovely life could be with her. After we kissed, I told Jen I loved her as well, then turned to leave, closing the door softly behind me. Before it shut completely, Jen called out, "There are some toothbrushes and toothpaste in the drawer next to the sink. Sweet dreams." I found the guest room, went into the bathroom, brushed my teeth, and settled into bed. I lay there thinking about all the great things waiting for me in Paris, living with Lizzie and Jen, and I began dreaming of a happy life. It felt like it took a while to fall asleep, but when I did, I slept well. After I got up and took care of myself, I dressed and headed to the kitchen where Lizzie and Jen were sitting together, chatting happily. When they noticed me, Lizzie jumped out of her chair, hugged me, and said she loved me. I kissed her forehead and then walked over to Jen to give her a quick kiss as well. I poured a cup of coffee from the French press and then sat down across from my two girls. "Dad," Lizzie said, "Jen and I were talking, and we've decided that the three of us are going to visit Versailles for the day. We should go to the hotel, have breakfast, and then Jen will meet us in an hour. Does that sound good?" I looked at Jen, who nodded in agreement with the plan, and then I replied, "That sounds good." I quickly drank my coffee, and Lizzie and I made our way to the hotel. We just made it in time for breakfast, ate quickly, and then rushed back to our room to shower and dress. While we waited for Jen, Lizzie said, "I have something to tell you, Dad. I wasn't really asleep on the chair last night. I was pretending. There are 3 things I want you to know. First, I knew Jen loved you, and I really hope you two can make it work. I like Jen a lot, and I think she will be a great mom. Second, I would love to live here. It's such an amazing place. And third, don't worry about me seeing that woman with that man. I'm fine and I won't be affected by it. Okay?" I chuckled and replied, I have 3 things to say back. First, you were right, and I'm really happy that Jen loves me because I love her too. Second, we'll see how the divorce goes. And third, I still want you to consider some counseling because I care about you and want to make sure you're all right. Lizzie hugged me and said, You're the best, Dad. You'll do what you think is best. The 3 of us spent the day in Versailles, exploring the former summer home of the French royal family. Lizzie got a lot of historical facts from 2 history teachers about the royals who lived there. We even walked through the gardens, imagining how beautiful it must be in summer, even though it was winter. When we returned to Paris, Lizzie and I took Jen out to dinner, and we had a wonderful time. The rest of the week was full of moments for the 3 of us. Jen and I were getting to know each other again. While Lizzie grew more fond of General on New Year's Eve, Lizzie said to me, Okay, Dad, I think you should spend the night with Jen alone. I'll be fine by myself at the hotel. I looked at her in surprise, which made her laugh. I can't leave you alone. This is our trip together. It wouldn't be fair to you, so let's not think about that. Lizzie shook her head and said, Listen, Dad, Jen loves you and you love her. I know you want to be close to her. I'm giving you both the chance to spend time together without me around. I want you to be sure you 2 are right for each other. I talked it over with General. It took a little while, but she agrees. Go to her, Dad. She cares about you. I stared at my daughter for a few moments, confused about how she knew all this. Then I blurted out, How do you know these things? When I was your age, Well, I won't share what I thought. Lizzie laughed and said, Girls think about love much earlier than boys do. Now go and see how much you really care about each other, Lizzie said before gently nudging me out the door. I walked toward Jen's apartment, feeling nervous. I worried Lizzie might have misunderstood things, but when Jen opened the door, it was clear she hadn't. She greeted me with a warm smile and reached out to take my hand. Before I could say a word, she pulled me close and we held each other tightly. Our kiss at the doorway was full of emotion. There was a deep warmth in it, something we both seemed to need. Jen looked into my eyes and asked softly, Sam, will you stay with me tonight? Her voice was quiet but full of hope. I smiled and nodded. There's nothing I'd like more. She led me into her bedroom. We stood beside the bed, close enough to feel each other's heartbeat. The night felt calm, intimate, and real. As we shared gentle touches and more kisses, all the stress and sadness I had been holding on to slowly melted away. There was no rush, just the quiet understanding between 2 people who had found comfort in each other. We lay together under the soft light of her room, wrapped in each other's arms. Time seemed to slow as we talked, kissed, and enjoyed the closeness. There was a calm trust between us, a kind of connection I hadn't felt in a very long time. Later, as we rested side by side, I realized how much peace I felt in that moment. Jen had shown me more care and warmth in one night than I had felt in years. When I looked at her, I saw someone who truly wanted me to be happy, someone who cared not just about the moment, but about me. I moved closer to her, gently placing soft kisses along her legs. Her skin was warm, and the quiet room made every small sound feel louder. I looked at her and felt grateful to be with someone who cared for me so deeply. There was peace in that moment, like we both knew we needed each other. Jen touched my face and smiled. I could see how much love was in her eyes. I wanted to show her how much I cared, how much I appreciated being close to her like this. We shared another long, slow kiss. Everything else faded away. She wrapped her arms around me and whispered, I love you, Sam. I've waited for this moment for so long. Her words filled my heart. I smiled back at her and said, I love you too. We held each other close, lying side by side as the night went on. The connection between us was strong not just in words, but in the way we stayed close and trusted one another. Every look, every soft word made us feel safe and understood. There was no rush. We took our time, enjoying the simple warmth of being together. Love filled the room, not in flashy ways, but in quiet ones through touch, through closeness, through the care in every moment we shared. Later, Jen looked at me and softly whispered again, Stay with me. I will, I said, always. After our special moment together, Jen hugged me tightly. She held me close, wrapping her arms around my neck and her legs around my waist. As she relaxed, a smile spread across her face. I told her, "Your ex made a mistake by cheating on you. You're amazing and so much fun to be with." Jen laughed and replied, "If he was foolish, then yours was really something." We both chuckled and talked about what the future might hold. I felt sure that I wanted to move to Paris because I wanted to be with Jen for a long time. I promised I would do everything I could to bring Lizzie and me to be with her. As the night went on, we dozed off for a bit, then woke up about an hour later and shared another warm moment together. I was surprised by how often we connected. At one point, we could hear our neighbors celebrating the new year outside. "Happy New Year, General, I love you," I exclaimed. "Happy New Year to you, Sam. I love you too." Finally, we got out of bed around 11:30 a.m., took a shower together, got dressed, and walked back to my hotel to find Lizzie. When we walked into the room, Lizzie was reading. Her eyes lit up with a big smile when she saw us. Jen rushed over and hugged her tightly, saying, "Thank you for everything last night. I love you, Lizzie, and I can't wait for you to live here with us." Both Jen and Lizzie had tears of happiness as they embraced. Lizzie then said, "Jen, I'm so excited to live here with you. I've never seen my dad as happy as he is right now." Jen held Lizzie at arm's length and suggested, "Why don't you both check out of this hotel and stay with me for the rest of your visit? I want to spend as much time as possible with you." Lizzie and I loved that idea. We spent the rest of our time in Paris at Jen's apartment and had a wonderful few days together. Lizzie and Jen grew closer with every moment. Jen even set up a meeting with Dr. Fignon, and after talking for a day, he offered me a teaching position starting in September. It looked like our future in Paris was secure, and all three of us were thrilled about it. However, our time together came to an end, and we had to return to our everyday lives. The goodbye with Jen was emotional, and both Lizzie and I promised to come back as soon as we could. When we landed in the States, the plane's wheels screeched against the runway, and the familiar sound of the engines faded into silence. I looked at Lizzie, my 18-year-old daughter, her hand still holding mine tightly. Her eyes, resembling her mother's but shining with strength, met mine. "We'll be okay, Dad," she whispered, her voice steady even with everything we had been through. I nodded and tried to smile, but I felt heavy thinking about going back to our life in Paris. The warm hugs from Genevieve and the cobblestone streets of Montmartre now felt like a distant dream, overshadowed by problems with Julie. We pulled our suitcases through the airport. The bright lights felt harsh compared to the soft glow of Paris. At home, the air felt unchanged, almost like the hurt we experienced was still there. I barely started to unpack when my phone pinged with an email from my lawyer, Tom. My stomach sank as I read it. Julie had hired a well-known lawyer and was asking for a large share of what we had, including the house my grandparents had given me. Her boldness angered me. She had torn our family apart and wanted to take what wasn't hers. I forwarded the email to Tom, my fingers shaking with frustration, and decided to stand my ground against her. The next morning, I took Lizzie to her first therapy session. Dr. Ellis, a gentlewoman with graying hair and a warm smile, welcomed us into her inviting office. Lizzie sat stiffly, arms crossed, while Dr. Ellis encouraged her to share her feelings about her mother. "I'm really angry at her," Lizzie admitted, her voice small. "But sometimes I feel like I should have tried to stop her." Her words hit me hard. I wanted to tell her that none of this was her fault. Yet Dr. Ellis calmly guided her through her feelings. As we left, I hugged Lizzie, whispering, "You're stronger than you think, kiddo." She nodded, though her eyes glimmered with tears. That evening, I set up my laptop for a video call with Genevieve. Her face appeared on the screen, bright even with the poor connection. Her dark hair pulled back as she sat in her Paris apartment. "How was your lecture today?" I asked, missing the comfort of her voice. She laughed as she talked about her students at the Sorbonne, her enthusiasm for history contagious. "I'm coming to the States in spring," she promised, her eyes warm. "You and Lizzie will not have to go through this alone." Her words felt like a lifeline, pulling me away from the chaos with Julie. Lizzie leaned over to wave at Genevieve. "Tell Maman Jeanne I miss her crepes," she said. and we all shared a laugh, the tension lifting for a moment. But our calm didn't last. At midnight, a loud knock on the door startled me awake. I checked the security camera. Julie was standing there, her face pale under the porch light. My heart raced as I opened the door just enough to speak. "What do you want?" I asked quietly, trying not to wake Lizzie. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded to see our daughter. "I've lost everything, Sam," she cried. "Please, just let me talk to her." I gritted my teeth, the image of her with Chad flashing in my mind. "You don't get to do this," I said firmly. "Not after what you did." I closed the door, her cries echoing outside as I leaned against it, my hands trembling. The next morning, my phone rang. Alice, Chad's wife. Her voice was calm but filled with emotion. "I found something," she said, pausing. "Messages between Julie and Chad. They planned to run away together before you caught them." I felt a deep hurt in my chest. Alice sent me screenshots showing Julie's betrayal. They had laughed about their secret meetings. I saved the messages and sent them to Tom. If Julie wanted a fight, I was ready to make sure she lost. Later that day, I went to the doctor for my test results. "All clear," he said, but his tone was careful. "Given your wife's actions, I suggest regular checks." His words stung, reminding me of Julie's choices. I asked about testing Lizzie, my voice filled with concern. The doctor reassured me it was unlikely she was at risk, but I made an appointment for her anyway. The thought of Julie putting our daughter in danger made me even more determined to protect her. I met Tom at his office, a busy place filled with legal books and coffee cups. I gave him the videos from the Christmas party and the home cameras, each one a strong piece of evidence against Julie. Tom watched them quietly and then nodded. "This is solid," he said. "With these and Alice's messages, you won't have to pay her anything in support." Relief washed over me, but it was mixed with bitterness. Winning the case wouldn't erase the hurt she had caused. At dinner, Lizzie's spirits lifted as she shared her dream to study history at the Sorbonne, inspired by Genevieve's passion. "I want to be like her dad," she said, her eyes shining, "learning about the past and teaching others." I smiled, feeling proud but also anxious about the costs of moving to Paris. "We'll make it happen," I promised, even though I worried about visas and money. The next day, an email from Professor Fignon arrived, confirming my job at the Sorbonne. "Come to Paris in March for the interview and contract signing," he wrote. A spark of hope lit up in me. This could be our chance for a fresh start. I shared the news with Lizzie, who squealed and hugged me tightly. "We're going to Paris for real!" she exclaimed, her excitement infectious. That hope faded when I received a text from Julie. "If you don't share the assets, I'll release your videos online." My heart sank. She was desperate, turning to threats. I sent the message to Tom, who told me it would only hurt her case. Yet the threat worried me, a reminder of how far she had fallen. Afraid that Julie might take things further, I decided to boost our home security by installing smart locks and improving the camera system. Lizzie caught me testing everything and smiled. "Turning our house into a fortress, huh, Dad?" she joked. I laughed, but the feeling in my stomach didn't go away. Julie's unpredictable behavior loomed over us like a dark cloud. At school, Lizzie struggled with whispers and stares from classmates who knew about her mother's problems. She came home in tears, telling me how she stood up to them, defending my name. "I told them you're the best dad anyone could have," she said, her voice trembling. I held her close, whispering, "I'm very proud of you." Her bravery impressed me, but I hated that she had to deal with this. A package arrived from Genevieve, bringing us some joy. Inside were history books for Lizzie and a soft scarf for me that smelled faintly of lavender. Lizzie hugged the scarf tightly, her voice gentle. "I miss Maman Jeanne." The nickname made me feel warm inside, reminding me of the family we were building across the ocean. That night, Lizzie and I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook between us. We wrote down the steps to move to Paris, sell the house, apply for visas, find a school for Lizzie. "This is our chance, Dad," she said, her eyes bright with hope. "A new beginning." I nodded, feeling the weight of the past and the possibility of the future. No matter what challenges Julie brought, we would face them together, with Genevieve waiting for us. The courthouse stood in front of me, its gray stone as cold as the worry in my stomach. I adjusted my tie and glanced at Lizzie beside me. She looked small in her navy blazer, her jaw set with determination that reminded me of myself. Today was the first divorce hearing, and seeing Julie again felt daunting. Inside, she sat across the room, looking worn but defiant, as if she could dismiss the truth. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered to her. When Julie looked at me, I saw a spark of desperation in her eyes before she quickly turned away. "The videos are fake," she claimed when questioned, her voice steady despite the untruth. I clenched my fists, trying not to shout. Tom, my lawyer, stood with calm strength. He presented the evidence, the video from the Christmas party showing Julie and Chad together in the parking lot, and the footage from our home cameras that revealed more. The courtroom fell silent as the images played, and I could see Julie's face growing pale with each frame. Her lawyer disagreed, saying the videos were changed, but the judge, a strict woman with sharp eyes, asked for time to look at them alone. "This is important evidence," she stated firmly. I felt a small spark of hope, but the hurt from Julie's betrayal felt heavier than before. Lizzie wanted to testify, even though I tried to stop her. She went to the witness stand, her hands shaking but her voice steady. "I saw my mom with that man," she told the judge, her gaze strong. "She picked him over our family." Her words cut through the room, honest and deep. Julie lowered her head, her shoulders shaking, but I felt no sorrow, only pride in Lizzie's bravery. The judge nodded and took notes, and as Lizzie returned to me, I held her hand tightly. Her face was pale but determined. "I had to do it, Dad," she said quietly. I hugged her tightly and replied, "You were amazing." Outside the courtroom, Julie lost control. She marched toward us in the hallway, her voice loud and angry. "You're ruining my life, Sam. You and Lizzie are breaking me apart." Her makeup ran down her face, attracting attention from people walking by. Lizzie flinched, and I stepped in front of her, my heart racing. "You did this to yourself," I said quietly but firmly. I took Lizzie's arm and guided her out of the courthouse. Her silence spoke louder than Julie's yelling. In the car, Lizzie stared out the window with her hands clenched into fists. I wanted to say something to comfort her, but I struggled to find the right words. That evening, Genevieve's face appeared on my laptop, brightening my mood from afar in Paris. She stood in front of Notre Dame, its tower reaching into the evening sky. "You're stronger than this storm," she said warmly. "Both of you." Lizzie leaned closer, watching the video several times, a small smile breaking through her worries. "Tell Maman Jeanne I want to see her soon," she said softly. Genevieve's encouragement felt like stability amid the chaos. I promised to call her again tomorrow, holding on to the thought of her waiting for us in Paris. Later, Alice called, her voice heavy with new news. "I found more texts," she said, forwarding messages between Julie and Chad. They showed a long affair, full of plans to deceive me and Alice. "They joked about keeping it a secret," Alice said, her voice shaky. The betrayal hurt even more, like a fresh wound. I sent the texts to Tom, my hands trembling as I read their harsh words. How had Julie kept this side of her hidden for so long? The woman I had loved for years felt like a stranger. At school, Lizzie faced a different kind of unfairness. A group of classmates, fueled by rumors about the ordeal, ignored her in the cafeteria. She came home with tired eyes, but she held her head high. "I joined the history club," she said with a forced smile. "They don't care about Mom's problems." I hugged her, amazed by her strength. She showed me a flyer for a field trip to a local museum. Her excitement was a small light in the dark. "It's like what Genevieve does," she added, and I nodded, feeling proud of her. Then I received a call from Guy Samuels, the bank president. "Julie and Chad are being investigated for taking money they shouldn't have," he said, sounding serious. "They moved client money to personal accounts." I was shocked, holding the phone like it was heavy. Julie's actions were not just personal, they were serious. How had the woman I married come to this? The news left me confused, making me question everything we had shared. To get ready for Paris, Lizzie and I downloaded a French language app. We sat together on the couch, trying to learn useful phrases. Lizzie laughed when I mispronounced croissant. "You're hopeless, Dad," she teased, but I couldn't help but feel proud as she quickly understood the verbs. "You'll be teaching me soon," I said, playfully ruffling her hair. These small moments helped us cope with the sadness around us. Then, Julie sent a letter, hiding it in Lizzie's backpack at school. In the letter, she asked for forgiveness and said, "I was lost, Lizzie. Please give me a chance." Lizzie read it out loud and then tore it into pieces, her voice firm. "She doesn't deserve us." I agreed, but I could see the hurt in her eyes, which matched my own. Julie's words came too late. The community came together to support us, which was a nice surprise. Neighbors brought over casseroles and cookies, and their kindness helped ease our pain. Mark, an old college friend, visited with a bottle of wine and offered to help us sell the house. "I know someone who can get you a good price," he said, putting his hand on my shoulder. His support felt like a lifeline, reminding me we were not alone. While cleaning the garage, I found an old box with Julie's journals. One entry from when Lizzie was 10 made me stop. "I feel trapped in this marriage, like I'm drowning." My heart sank as I read her words. Had I missed the signs? Did I fail her? I closed the journal, unable to read more, feeling the weight of our troubled history. At dinner, I chose to share what I found in the journal with Lizzie. "Sometimes love changes," I said, my voice heavy. "It's not your fault or mine." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Dad, as long as I have you, I'm okay." Her words healed a small part of me. We sat quietly, knowing our bond was stronger than ever. Another package arrived from Genevieve. Inside was a small painting of the Eiffel Tower for Lizzie and a warm letter for me. "I'm counting the days until you're here," she wrote. Lizzie taped the painting above her desk, her eyes sparkling. "Maman Jeanne gets us," she said, and I smiled, feeling the pull of Paris drawing us closer. The next day, I met Mark to sign the house sale agreement. The offer was higher than I thought it would be, giving us a financial cushion for our new life. I moved the money to a new account safe from Julie's access. As I signed, Mark smiled. "You're making the right choice, Sam. Paris is your future." I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. This house held memories of both love and hurt, but Paris offered a chance for a fresh start. When the plane flew through the clouds, Paris appeared, its rooftops shining in the March sunlight. My heart lifted, and the troubles of the past week's courtrooms, Julie's accusations, and Lizzie's quiet sadness faded for a moment. Next to me, Lizzie pressed her face to the window, her eyes wide with joy. "We're back, Dad," she said, her voice full of excitement. I squeezed her hand, feeling the attraction of this city, where Genevieve and a new future awaited us. As we stepped off the plane at Charles de Gaulle, I saw Genevieve in the arrivals hall, her dark hair shimmering in the light. She rushed over and hugged us tightly, her eyes bright with happiness. "You're here," she whispered, her voice warm. Lizzie laughed, holding on to her, and for a moment we felt like a family, untouched by the troubles we left behind. The next morning I arrived at the Sorbonne for my interview with Professor Fignon. His office was full of books and papers, smelling of old pages. He greeted me with a firm handshake, his eyes sharp but friendly. "Your thesis on the Renaissance was impressive," he said, looking through a copy I had written 2 decades ago. We talked about my teaching experience and research ideas, and I began to feel confident again, a feeling I hadn't had since Julie's actions hurt me. By the end of our meeting, Fignon smiled broadly. "We'd love to have you start in September," he said, giving me a contract. I shook his hand, hope filling me. This was real. Paris was becoming our new home. Genevieve took Lizzie on a tour of the Sorbonne while I met with Fignon. When they returned, they were buzzing with joy, and Lizzie had a university brochure in her hand. "Dad, this place is amazing," she said, her eyes sparkling. "I want to study here forever." Genevieve introduced her to some students, who welcomed her warmly and asked about her favorite historical periods. Lizzie held her own in the conversation, her love for history shining through. Genevieve smiled at me, and I felt grateful for her part in Lizzie's life. My daughter was finding her place, and I began to hope we could start fresh here. That evening, Genevieve and I took a walk by the Seine River. The water sparkled under the city lights, and the air smelled lightly of blooming flowers. We paused on a quiet bridge, and she leaned against me, bringing comfort to my racing thoughts. "After you left Paris all those years ago," she said quietly, "I wrote you a letter. I put my heart into it, but I never sent it." Her words surprised me, bringing back memories from our college days when I was too shy to share my feelings. I kissed her under the glowing street lamps, with the city surrounding us. "I am here now," I whispered, and she smiled, her eyes showing hope for our future together. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a call from Tom, my lawyer, breaking the magic of the moment. "Julie wants visitation rights with Lizzie," he said, sounding tense. "She claims you are keeping Lizzie from her." Anger rose in me. "Lizzie's 18, I replied sharply. "She decides who she sees." Tom reassured me that the court would likely agree with us, thanks to Lizzie's side of the story, but Julie's insistence worried me. I didn't want to tell Lizzie about it, as I didn't want to spoil her excitement, but Julie's shadow lingered even here. Lizzie met Sophie, the daughter of Genevieve's colleague, at a cafe on campus. The two clicked right away, chatting quickly in French, leaving me amazed. "When did your French get so good?" I asked Lizzie, half laughing. She beamed, shrugging. "I've been practicing, Dad." Sophie, a cheerful girl, invited Lizzie to a student event, and I saw my daughter light up in a way she hadn't since the trouble. Genevieve squeezed my hand and whispered, "She's going to be fine here." I nodded, but a part of me worried about how fast she was jumping into this new life. We spent a day exploring Paris, starting at the Musée d'Orsay, where Lizzie admired Van Gogh's beautiful stars. We enjoyed crepes from a street vendor, the warm, sweet dough melting in our mouths, and took pictures in front of the Louvre glass pyramid. Lizzie's laughter filled the air as she posed playfully, then turned serious. "Paris is where I belong, Dad," she said. Her words sank deep in my heart, reassuring me that this move was right, despite the challenges we faced ahead. During dinner at a cozy bistro, Genevieve suggested that we move into her apartment when we return to Paris for good. "It's small, but we'll make it work," she said, her eyes shining with hope. I hesitated, concerned about Lizzie adjusting to a new home so soon after leaving the old one. But Lizzie nodded eagerly. "I love your home, Maman Jeanne," she said, using a name that made me feel warm inside. I agreed, but the thoughts of visas and money weighed heavily on my mind. Then I got an email from Alice with surprising news. "Chad has been arrested for stealing money," she wrote, explaining how he had taken funds from the bank. She thanked me for helping her escape his lies and shared a picture of her kids playing in a park. The sight of them smiling eased my worries Alice was moving on, and I hoped we could do the same. I replied, sending her encouragement, and saved the photo to show Lizzie. Julie sent a message to Genevieve, whose number she somehow found. "You're ruining my family," the text said, filled with anger and desperation. Genevieve showed it to me, keeping her expression calm. "I blocked her," she said firmly. "She can't affect us here." Her strength gave me support, but Julie's words from afar reminded me of the struggle we still faced. Lizzie signed up for a short French course, diving into the lessons with impressive focus. Genevieve joined us for a session, praising Lizzie's quick learning. "You have a talent," she told her, and Lizzie lit up with pride. I watched, my heart soaring as their bond grew. Lizzie was not just my daughter anymore, she was becoming part of Genevieve's life. We went to Genevieve's apartment, a bright space filled with books and a small balcony. She had painted a beautiful mural of Paris rooftops on one wall, a special gift for Lizzie's future room. Lizzie's eyes filled with tears as she hugged Genevieve tightly. "It's perfect," she whispered. I stepped back, watching them, my throat tight with emotion. This was the home we could create, a safe place away from the past. I had a meeting with an immigration consultant, a straightforward woman who explained what paperwork I needed for my work visa. "It's complicated," she said, listing more documents than I expected. My heart sank, but Genevieve held my hand. "We'll get through this together," she said, her voice steady. Her positive attitude helped ease my worries about the challenges ahead. Genevieve hosted a small dinner with her friends, introducing us as her new family. The table was filled with cheese, drinks, and laughter, and I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't felt since before Julie's betrayal. Lizzie entertained everyone with stories from our first trip to Paris, and Genevieve's friends raised their glasses to celebrate our future. "To Sam and Lizzie," one said, "the newest members of Paris." I clinked glasses with them, feeling the warmth of the moment wrap around me. On the flight back to the States, Lizzie held my hand, her voice soft but strong. "Dad, I want to live in Paris forever." Her words reflected my own dreams, a wish we shared. I nodded, feeling more determined. Julie's threats, the legal troubles, and the hurt of our past wouldn't hold us back. Paris was our future, and I'd do anything to make it happen. Coming back to America felt like entering a difficult situation. The joy of Paris Genevieve's warm hugs, the promise of the Sorbonne, and Lizzie's laughter by the river dimmed under the shadow of Julie. While we unpacked, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Tom, my lawyer, confirming my worries. Julie had asked for visitation rights with Lizzie, even though our daughter was now 18. Anger rushed through me, but I took a deep breath for Lizzie's sake. She was in her room, sorting through souvenirs from Paris, still glowing from the city's charm. I decided not to tell her about the legal issue not yet. She had already dealt with so much, and I wanted to protect her from this new challenge. However, Lizzie took matters into her own hands. Without telling me, she wrote a letter to the court, her words strong and clear. "My mother chose to hurt our family," she wrote, her handwriting steady despite her feelings. "I don't want to see her." She showed me the letter before sending it, looking at me for approval. "Is this okay, Dad?" she asked softly. I hugged her tightly, my throat feeling tight. "It's more than okay," I replied. "It's your truth." Her bravery inspired me, but it also hurt my heart my daughter shouldn't have to face these struggles. That week, the sale of our house finished, bringing a mix of relief and sadness. Mark, my old friend, had found a buyer who offered more than I expected. As I signed the papers, the familiar creak of the floorboards reminded me of many memories: Lizzie's first steps, family dinners, and Julie's betrayal. I moved the money into a new account, safe from Julie's control, feeling a burden lift. This money was our ticket to Paris, our chance to move on from the past. "You're doing the right thing," Mark said, patting my shoulder. I nodded, but it still felt hard to let go. Genevieve's daily video calls were a source of comfort. Every evening, her face filled my laptop screen, and her voice brought me peace. She sent a video of a lovely picnic by the river, her laughter mixing with the sounds of families enjoying Paris. "You and Lizzie will love this," she said, showing the sparkling river. Lizzie watched with her eyes shining with desire. "Maman Jen makes Paris feel like home," she said softly. I smiled, but Julie's recent actions weighed on my mind, reminding me that our escape wasn't fully secure yet. A chilling message arrived on Lizzie's phone late one night. "Stay away from Paris, or you'll regret it." I felt a rush of fear as she showed it to me, her hands shaking. "Who would do this, Dad?" she asked quietly. I immediately thought of Julie, her anxiety clear in everything she did, but there was no evidence. The number was untraceable, likely from a disposable phone. I held Lizzie close, promising to keep her safe, even though worry gnawed at me. This wasn't just about the divorce anymore. It felt personal and risky. Using my old skills in cybersecurity, I traced the message to a coffee shop near Chad's old apartment. The discovery sent chills through me. It was too close to Julie's life to be a coincidence. I reported it to the police, who said they would look into it, but their casual tone made me frustrated. "We're watching, Lizzie," I told her, installing an app to track her phone. She nodded, but her usual brightness was dimmed, and I felt anger towards Julie for stealing even a bit of her happiness. The next court hearing felt tense. Julie took the stand, her eyes red and her voice shaky as she claimed she was sorry. "I want to make things right," she cried, looking at me as if to get sympathy. I stayed quiet, letting Tom's evidence speak, videos, texts, and Lizzie's letter. The judge's face showed no emotion, but I could see Julie start to crumble, gripping the stand. I avoided looking at her, focusing instead on Lizzie beside me, her jaw tight. The truth was our strongest point, and I believed it would help us through. The judge made her decision quickly. "Considering the evidence and Miss Butler's age," she said, "the request for visitation is denied. No support will be given." A wave of relief washed over me, clearing away weeks of stress. Julie slumped, her lawyer whispering urgently, but I felt no sense of victory, only tiredness. Lizzie squeezed my hand, her face showing a mix of relief and sadness. "It's over, right?" she asked. I nodded, hoping that was so, but the fear of Julie's persistence still lingered. Lizzie's graduation was a bright moment amid the chaos. She walked across the stage, her cap decorated with a history club pin, her smile shining as she was named the top student in history. In her speech, she thanked me, her voice steady. "My dad showed me what strength looks like," she said, and the crowd erupted in applause. I wiped away tears, feeling pride grow within me. Lizzie was my strength and my reason to keep going. The next day, Chad called, sounding desperate. "Don't send Alice those messages," he pleaded, apologizing for his actions. "I'm already in trouble." His plea annoyed me. Where was this regret when he was with my family? "You made your choices," I said coldly, hanging up. I sent Alice the latest messages anyway, knowing she deserved to know the truth. Chad had to face his issues, just as Julie needed to confront hers. Lizzie sent in her application to the Sorbonne, encouraged by a strong recommendation from Genevieve. "I'm going to make it, Dad," she said with a bright smile. Her confidence was contagious. With her excellent grades and love for history, I had no doubt this was meant for her. I helped her improve her essay about the French Revolution, and my hopes grew. Paris was no longer just a dream. It was becoming real. Then I received an unsettling email. "You might lose your Sorbonne job if you're not careful." The anonymous message sent a shiver through me, but I quickly shared it with Fignon. He called me within hours, his voice steady. "No one is taking your place, Sam," he assured me. "You are part of our team." His support gave me strength, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that the threats were from Julie. To protect our future, I tightened our home security. At the graduation ceremony, I saw Julie looking worn as she approached Lizzie in the parking lot. "Please, honey," she said, reaching toward her. Lizzie stepped back, clearly upset. "You lost the right to be my mom," she yelled, pushing past her. I stood there, feeling a mix of anger and sympathy as I saw Julie's expression change. Lizzie grabbed my arm, her eyes fierce. "Let's go, Dad." We left Julie behind, her crying fading away. I worked on the paperwork for our work visa, tackling a lot of forms with help from Genevieve's contacts. Lizzie signed up for a school in Paris, which would help her prepare for the Sorbonne. Each document felt like a step closer to our new life. "We're almost there," I told Lizzie, who replied with a nod, her eyes shining with determination. Mark hosted a farewell party for us, our living room filled with friends and neighbors. He gave us a beautiful painting of Paris, its skyline glowing under a sunset. "For your new home," he said with a big smile. Lizzie hugged him, her laughter blending with the sound of glasses clinking. As the night went on, I looked around at the faces that had supported us through tough times. Julie's presence lingered in my mind, but in this circle of love, I felt ready for a fresh start. Paris was waiting, and we were eager to begin. As August sunlight poured through Genevieve's Parisian apartment windows, Lizzie and I carried our suitcases inside. The air was filled with the scent of fresh lilies and warm pastries. A small welcome spread was set on the table, croissants, macarons, and a vase overflowing with flowers. Genevieve met us with a bright smile and a warm hug that felt like home. "You're here for good now," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Lizzie laughed, spinning around the cozy room, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I watched them, my heart filled with a delicate hope. After months of challenges, Julie's threats, court visits, and leaving our old life behind, Paris felt like a new beginning. Lizzie started at her new school the next week, carrying her backpack on one shoulder as she left with Sophie, a friend she had made during our visit in March. That evening she returned, her face shining with stories about her classmates and teachers. "It's exciting, Dad, but I really like it," she said, showing me a notebook full of French phrases. She had started a diary in French, her writing neat and careful, capturing her first days in Paris. "It feels like I'm becoming someone new," she told me, and I smiled, proud of her bravery to embrace this change. My own new path began at the Sorbonne, where Professor Fignon introduced me to the faculty as the Star from America. The title made me laugh, but his warm welcome helped calm my nerves. During my first session, I led a seminar on Renaissance art, and the students' eager questions ignited a passion in me I hadn't felt in years. Their energy reminded me why I chose this path, and as I left the lecture hall, Fignon patted my shoulder. "You're going to fit right in, Sam," he said. For the first time in months, I believed him. Evenings with Genevieve strengthened our connection. We cooked together in her small kitchen, her laughter filling the space as I tried to follow a recipe. Later, we walked through the quiet streets of Paris, her hand in mine, the city lights glowing around us. One night, under a sky full of stars, she kissed me gently and said, "This is real, Sam. Us." Her words washed away the doubts from my past, and I felt a happiness so pure it almost surprised me. This was love, not the fragile kind I had known, but something strong and lasting. An email from Julie broke the peaceful moment. "I'm sorry for everything," she wrote, asking to see Lizzie. "I just want a chance to talk." My jaw tightened as I read her words, the memory of her betrayal still fresh. I replied briefly, "It's Lizzie's choice, not mine." I didn't share this with Lizzie right away, wanting to protect her joy, but I knew we would need to discuss it soon. Julie's presence lingered, even from far away. Lizzie threw herself into her new life, joining the history club and planning a trip to Versailles. She invited me and Genevieve, her voice filled with excitement. "You're my family now," she said, hugging us both. At Versailles, we explored the beautiful halls with Lizzie taking notes about Marie Antoinette. Genevieve and I smiled at each other, proud to see her thrive. Paris was helping her heal little by little, and I felt thankful for this city and the wonderful woman by my side. Alice came to Paris with her 2 kids, a surprise visit that lifted our spirits. Over coffee, she told me that Chad had been sentenced to 3 years in prison for fraud. "You helped me see the truth, Sam," she said softly. "I'm starting fresh because of you." Her kids played around the apartment, laughing as Lizzie taught them some French words. Seeing Alice's strength reminded me of my own hopes, and I hugged her tightly, thankful for our shared journey. We took Alice and her kids to Montmartre, exploring the cobbled streets. We enjoyed warm baguettes from a bakery, their crust crackling in our hands, and took photos in front of the Sacré-Cœur's white domes. Lizzie's laughter rang out as she chased Alice's son up the steps, her joy contagious. "This is the best day, Dad," she said, her face beaming. For a moment, I forgot about my worries and challenges, lost in the simple pleasure of her happiness. Reality returned with the arrival of bills. The cost of living in Paris was more than I expected. Rent, groceries, and Lizzie's school fees added up quickly. Genevieve offered to share expenses, her voice calm yet firm. "We're a team, Sam," she said. I felt proud and hesitant. I wanted to support Lizzie on my own. "I'll figure it out," I told her, even though my savings were running low. I spent many nights looking over budgets, determined to manage without her help. One evening, Lizzie confided in Genevieve while they sat on the balcony. "I feel bad for shutting Mom out," she said softly, gazing at the Paris skyline. "But I can't forgive her yet." Genevieve hugged her, promising to always be there. "You don't have to decide now," she reassured her. I stood in the doorway, my heart heavy for Lizzie's struggles but warmed by Genevieve's kindness. She was becoming the mother Lizzie needed, filling the gap that Julie had left. Fignon called me into his office with an offer for a research project on the Renaissance, which came with a significant grant. "Finish it by spring, and it'll help your career," he said, his eyes bright with hope. This opportunity felt like a lifeline, a way to relieve our financial worries. I threw myself into the work, spending late nights at the Sorbonne Library, the smell of old books comforting me. This project wasn't just about money. It was my chance to prove myself in this new world. But then, Julie appeared, disrupting everything. One morning as I left the Sorbonne, I saw her across the street, looking pale and worn. "Sam, please," she called, walking toward me. Anger rose in me, but I kept my voice calm. "You can't surprise us here," I said, my hand ready to call for help. "Leave or I will." She stepped back, tears rolling down her face, but her presence in Paris made me uneasy. How far would she go? Lizzie asked me to join her for a meeting with Julie at a cafe nearby, but she wanted me to keep my distance. I sat at a table a little way off, watching as Julie cried and waved her hands around. Lizzie listened closely, her face hard to read, and she seemed tense. When they were done, Lizzie walked over to me, looking lost. "She told me something," she said quietly. She was pregnant with Chad's baby, but she lost it, and that made her realize she had made mistakes. I felt a twist in my stomach. Julie's pain was real, but it didn't change her choices. Lizzie shook her head. I need time to think, Dad. I nodded, giving her space, even though I hated that Julie still affected her feelings. That evening, Genevieve brought us back to happiness by cooking a warm pot of cassoulet, and the delicious smell filled the apartment. We gathered around the table and Lizzie teased Genevieve about her secret French recipes. You're now Maman Jen, Lizzie said with a bright laugh. I watched them with a full heart, feeling the weight of Julie's visit lighten in this moment. Genevieve caught my eye and smiled softly, reminding me that we were creating something strong together. Autumn in Paris felt magical, with golden leaves on the streets and cool air full of promise. But Julie's presence lingered, impossible to ignore. One day after school, Lizzie came home looking very upset. Sophie, her friend, had given her a letter from Julie that she got during history club. She's asking to see me again, Lizzie said, throwing the crumpled letter on the kitchen table. Sophie thinks I should give her a chance, but I'm done being pushed. Her voice wavered with anger, and I felt guilty for Sophie's well-meaning but troubling help. You decide what feels right, I said, giving her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. No one else can do that for you. She nodded, but the letter lay between us like an unspoken problem. I couldn't shake the worry that Julie's persistence stirred in me. Using my old skills in cybersecurity, I searched for Julie's location through social media and public records. I found out she was working at a small cafe in the 11th arrondissement and living in a tiny apartment nearby. The realization unsettled me. She was closer than I'd thought, like a storm brewing. I didn't tell Lizzie, not wanting to spoil her excitement about Paris, but I kept a tracking app on my phone to watch for Julie's next move. Later that evening, Lizzie sat down with me, looking thoughtful. Dad, I'm wondering why Mom did what she did, she said, twirling a piece of her hair. Not just the affair, but everything. I'm not ready to forgive her yet. Her honesty hit me hard, reflecting my own unresolved feelings about Julie. I hugged her tight and spoke softly. Take your time, Lizzie. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you. Her small smile felt like a victory, showing she was handling her pain with a strength I admired. I needed something to ground us, to help us face the challenges ahead. That evening, I took Genevieve to a cozy little bistro by the Seine, where the lights shone warmly against the dark river. The air was filled with the scent of roasted chestnuts, and her laughter brought me comfort as we enjoyed a bottle of wine together. My heart raced as I took out a simple silver ring from my pocket and knelt beside our table. Genevieve, you're my home, I said, my voice breaking a little. Will you marry me? Tears rolled down her cheeks as she nodded and kissed me. The other diners clapped, their cheers blending with the soft sounds of the river. For that moment, nothing else mattered, just the love between us. Lizzie was overjoyed when we told her the next morning. She squealed and hugged Genevieve tightly. Maman Jeanne, you're stuck with us now, she joked, her eyes sparkling. I'm going to plan the best wedding. She began dreaming up ideas for flowers and dresses, her excitement contagious. Watching her and Genevieve made my heart swell with gratitude. This was the family we were creating, stronger than the one that had fallen apart before. However, not everything was perfect. Trouble was brewing at the Sorbonne, which contrasted sharply with our happiness. A colleague named Mark spread unkind rumors that my position was only because of Genevieve, not because of my hard work. The gossip hurt deeply, undermining all the effort I had put into my teaching. I confronted him in the faculty lounge, keeping my voice calm but firm. My work speaks for itself, I told him, looking him in the eye. Mark mumbled an apology, but the air was still tense. Fignon, my supervisor, called me in. He looked serious. I've taken care of it, he said. Your work stands on its own, Sam. His support lifted my spirits, but the incident still left a sour feeling. Lizzie decided she wanted to meet Julie again, this time at Luxembourg Gardens. I tagged along, choosing to keep my distance on a nearby bench, crunching autumn leaves underfoot. Julie appeared fragile, her hands tightly clasped as she spoke. Lizzie listened carefully, her expression unreadable, then suddenly stood up. I need a year, Mom, she declared firmly. No contact. You have to show that you've changed. Julie nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. and I felt a moment of pity, which quickly faded as I remembered her past actions. Later, Lizzie confided in me about Julie's confession. Chad had pressured her into participating in dishonest activities at the bank, threatening to expose their past if she didn't follow along. "She was scared, Dad," Lizzie said, her voice gentle but conflicted. "But that doesn't erase what she did." I nodded in agreement, understanding her feelings while sharing her determination. "She has to earn your trust back," I said. Lizzie's jaw tightened, making it clear she was setting limits that Julie needed to respect. To clear my name at the Sorbonne, I wrote an article for the university's journal about my research on Renaissance art supporters. The article was well received, and Mark approached me with a shy tone. "I was wrong about you," he said, offering a handshake. I accepted it, but my focus remained on my work, not on his opinion. The atmosphere at the Sorbonne lightened, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Sunday nights became our tradition, with Genevieve, Lizzie, and me around a board game. Lizzie laughed as she beat me at Monopoly, teasing, "You're terrible at this, Dad." Genevieve joined in, her eyes bright, and for those hours we felt invincible, a family built on love, not just by blood. These moments protected us from the troubles Julie stirred. Then an email from Alice brought good news. She had received a settlement from the bank and opened a small bakery in her hometown. "I'm finally free," she wrote, sharing a photo of her kids decorating cupcakes. I showed it to Lizzie, who smiled warmly. "She deserves this," she said. Alice's strength reminded us that we could rebuild after being hurt. Lizzie's application to the Sorbonne was accepted, along with a partial scholarship that eased my worries about money. Genevieve beamed when she heard the news and hugged Lizzie tightly. "You'll be a great historian," she said, her voice filled with pride. Lizzie blushed, but her confidence shone, showing how much she had grown in Paris. Wedding planning began in earnest. Genevieve and I picked a small church in Montmartre for our spring ceremony, its beautiful stained glass windows perfect for our vows. We invited her family and Sophie, and Lizzie took charge of the invitations, crafting lovely designs of Paris landmarks. "It's going to be perfect," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. I watched her, amazed at how far she'd come from the girl who faced Julie in court. Then Julie sent an email. "I'm leaving Paris," she wrote. "I'll respect Lizzie's wishes and stay away for a year." She mentioned going back to the States to start over. I read the message twice, looking for any sign of truth, but my trust in her was gone. I forwarded it to Lizzie, who nodded quietly. "I hope she means it," she said, her voice cautious. I felt the same, a careful hope, shaped by years of disappointment. Paris was ours now, and Julie's leaving felt like the storm was finally over. Autumn deepened in the city, with streets filled with red and gold leaves. Lizzie's first day at the Sorbonne arrived, and she rushed out of our apartment, her backpack filled with notebooks for her European history courses. That evening, she burst through the door, her eyes shining with excitement. "Dad, the talk about the 100 Years' War was amazing!" she exclaimed, her words spilling out as she shared how her professor brought the story to life. I listened, feeling proud. Lizzie was no longer the girl hurt by Julie's betrayal. She was a young woman finding her place in a city that accepted her. My own work at the Sorbonne was thriving. My Renaissance classes attracted eager students, their questions sparking lively discussions that filled the halls. After one lively session, Fignon pulled me aside, his eyes warm. "You have a talent for inspiring them, Sam," he said, giving my shoulder a friendly pat. His kind words grounded me, reminding me that I had earned my spot here, despite the rumors Mark had spread. Teaching felt like breathing again, each class bringing me closer to the life I had always wanted in Paris. Then, we faced trouble with Genevieve. A student claimed she was unfair in grading, which rattled her usually calm attitude. Over dinner, her hands shook as she spoke. "This could harm my reputation," she said quietly. I took her hand, assuring her that I would help. We spent hours reviewing her grading records, gathering proof of her fairness. I stayed up late, organizing spreadsheets for the review board. When the panel cleared her of wrongdoing, Genevieve sank into my arms, relief flooding over her. "I couldn't have done this without you," she murmured. I kissed her forehead, feeling the strength of our partnership. Lizzie's blog about life in Paris took off, her colorful posts about crepe stands and hidden bookstores attracting thousands of readers. One evening, she showed me an email from a French travel magazine asking her to write an article. "Can you believe it, Dad?" she said, beaming. I hugged her, amazed by her talent. "You're a star," I replied, and she laughed, already brainstorming ideas for her piece. Her success was a bright moment, showing that Paris was helping her dreams grow. Tom's call brought closure to a difficult time. "The divorce is finalized," he said plainly. "You're free, Sam." I sank onto the couch, feeling the weight of those words. I was no longer connected to Julie, but the win felt bittersweet, filled with memories of our early days, laughter, shared dreams, a family now apart. I didn't tell Lizzie right away, wanting her to enjoy her Sorbonne excitement, but the finality stirred a quiet ache in me. Genevieve's family came to visit for the weekend, their warmth surrounding us. Her parents, Pierre and Claire, welcomed Lizzie and me like long-lost friends, their hugs filled with the scent of lavender. Lizzie connected with Elise, Genevieve's teenage cousin, and the two of them laughed over French pop music in Lizzie's room. At dinner, Pierre raised his glass and toasted to our new family. Lizzie smiled brightly, and I exchanged a grateful look with Genevieve. This was the sense of belonging we had longed for, a welcome change from the loneliness that Julie had left us with. However, financial stress was creeping back in, reminding me of our past troubles. A credit card statement showed a $5,000 debt from Julie's spending, something I had not known about. My stomach turned at the thought, but I decided to pay it off to protect my credit, using some of our savings. The worry kept me up at night as I worked out our budgets in the dark. Genevieve saw my stress and offered to help with the expenses, but I declined. "I can manage," I insisted, wanting to be strong for Lizzie. One evening, Lizzie opened up to Genevieve while they sat on the balcony. "I'm afraid Mom will never change," she admitted, looking out at the city lights. Genevieve shared her own story of a past marriage that had left her hesitant about love. "It takes time to heal," she told Lizzie kindly. "Setting boundaries is important." I listened from the doorway, thankful for Genevieve's support as she helped Lizzie through a difficult time I couldn't fully reach. Fignon presented a new chance, a book deal focusing on Renaissance patronage, with a publisher eager for my insights. "This could shape your career," he said excitedly. The advance would help ease our financial burden, and I jumped into research, spending evenings at the Sorbonne's library filled with ancient books. This project felt like a lifeline, a way to secure our future in Paris. Lizzie's excitement about the Sorbonne faded as the homework piled up. One day, she came home looking defeated. "It's too much, Dad," she said quietly. I suggested a break, and we spent a Saturday at Parc des Buttes-Chaumont, playing frisbee and enjoying ice cream. Her laughter returned carefree as we watched the ducks on the lake. "Thanks for this," she said, hugging me. I felt a wave of relief seeing her happy again. Lizzie's 19th birthday was a joyful occasion for our new life. Genevieve and I organized a party in our apartment, inviting Sophie and Elise. The table was filled with treats and a chocolate cake, its candles flickering as Lizzie made a wish. "I want our family to stay happy forever," she said, blowing them out. Sophie cheered, and Elise wrapped a scarf around Lizzie's shoulders, calling it her Parisian crown. My heart was warm as I watched Genevieve hold my hand. This was the happiness we had worked for. Then came an email from Alice with more good news. She sent pictures of her bakery, showcasing shelves filled with cupcakes and bread. "Come visit this summer," she wrote. "I found my peace thanks to you," I told Lizzie, who gave me a warm smile. "She's strong, just like us," she replied. Alice's win felt like a reflection of our own progress, reminding us that we could get past our struggles. Genevieve and I moved into a bigger apartment near the Sorbonne. It had a bright room for Lizzie and a cozy corner for my writing desk. As we signed the lease, our hands brushed together, and we both dreamed about our new life there. "It's ours," Genevieve said, her eyes shining with excitement. The move felt like a new beginning, a place for us to grow as a family. Lizzie twirled through the empty rooms, already deciding where to put her painting of the Eiffel Tower. One night before bed, Lizzie shared a letter she had written to Julie. It was short and clear. "I'm not ready to forgive you, but I hope you find happiness." She looked at me with determination. "I want to close that chapter, Dad," she said. I nodded, feeling proud of her bravery. The next day, she mailed the letter, a quiet way to find closure. Julie's presence was fading, and Paris was filling our lives with warmth. As winter settled over Paris, bringing a soft chill, we prepared for the wedding. Genevieve and I spent our evenings in our new apartment planning our ceremony at a small church in Montmartre with beautiful stained glass windows. Lizzie, our maid of honor, buzzed with excitement, creating seating charts, while Sophie, our photographer, looked for the best angles for pictures. Our apartment buzzed with energy, covered in paper swatches and guest lists. "This is going to be wonderful," Lizzie said, her smile shining brightly. I caught Genevieve's warm gaze, which calmed me, and I felt the promise of our new beginning taking shape. Lizzie showed her talent with the wedding invitations. She spent hours drawing lovely pictures of the Eiffel Tower and the Sorbonne's famous front, her lines careful and filled with emotion. Genevieve framed one of her sketches and hung it in our living room. "You're an artist, Lizzie," she said proudly. Lizzie blushed and brushed off the compliment, but I could see her growing confidence. I watched her, amazed at how Paris had brought out this new side of her, a stark change from the girl who had faced Julie's hurt. My own work reached a big milestone when my article about Renaissance art supporters was published in a well-known academic journal. It received praise from Fignon and scholars even in Italy. "You're making an impact, Sam," Fignon said at a faculty meeting, beaming with joy. Colleagues who once talked about favoritism now congratulated me, and their approval felt like a relief. I was no longer just the American starting over. I was becoming a scholar building my own path. Lizzie's blog about life in Paris caught the eye of a French publisher who emailed her with an offer to write a book about her experiences as a young American in the city. She showed me the message, her eyes wide with excitement but a little nervous. "What if I'm not ready, Dad?" she asked, chewing her lip. I hugged her and said, "You have a voice people love. You can do this." She nodded and started writing down ideas, her ambition shining bright like the passion I saw in my students. Genevieve's star rose higher when the Sorbonne gave her the Outstanding Professor Award for her creative teaching. The news came on a snowy afternoon, and she stood in our kitchen, stunned, holding the letter. I organized a small celebration, inviting Sophie, Elise, and a few colleagues to our apartment. We toasted with sparkling juice, filling the room with laughter and happy chatter. "To Genevieve, who brightens every room," I said, raising my glass. She flushed and squeezed my hand, relieved after dealing with some unfair accusations. Her win felt like ours, a shared success in our new life. A bouquet arrived at our door, a surprise from Julie. Among the flowers was a card congratulating us on our wedding, her handwriting neat but loaded with meaning. "I respect Lizzie's boundaries and wish you happiness." Lizzie read it quietly, her expression unreadable, then set it aside. "I'm not writing back," she said, her voice steady. I nodded, respecting her choice. Julie's gesture seemed like a last attempt, but we were done responding. Paris was our safe place now, and she no longer influenced us. We took a weekend trip to Normandy, driving through green fields to visit the D-Day beaches. Lizzie wandered the shores of Omaha Beach, her notebook open as she wrote down historical facts, her eyes bright with curiosity. "This place feels full of stories," she said, the wind playing with her scarf. I watched her, pride swelling in my chest. Genevieve squeezed my hand, whispering, "She's amazing." The trip reminded us of how far we'd come, our family growing closer with each shared moment. The research grant from my Renaissance project came through, a significant amount that cleared Julie's lingering debt and gave us enough to start saving for Lizzie's future. I breathed easier, feeling the weight of financial stress lift for the first time in months. Genevieve and I sat down to plan our budget, our heads bent over spreadsheets, and I felt a quiet confidence. "We're building something real," I told her, and she smiled, her hand resting on mine. Lizzie's love for Paris grew stronger. One evening, as we walked home from a cafe, she stopped under a street lamp, her breath visible in the cold air. "I want to stay here forever, Dad," she said. "This city gave me a real family." Her words were strong and heartfelt, making a home in my heart. I hugged her tightly, the lights of Paris shining brightly around us, and felt like we had found our place. In a quiet moment, I shared my worries with Genevieve. We sat on our balcony, watching the city sparkle below. "What if I let you down, like I did with Julie?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She took my hand, her gaze firm. "Well, build this together, Sam. No one lets anyone down when we're together." Her words eased the weight in my chest, filling me with confidence. This love was special, strong, sure, and ours. Lizzie introduced me to Pierre, a quiet French student from her history class, over coffee at a cozy cafe. He was polite, his accent clear as he spoke about old buildings, but I felt a need to look after Lizzie. "Has just a friend, Dad," Lizzie said with a hint of annoyance, but her blush showed me she cared. Later, Genevieve gently nudged me. "Have faith in her, Sam. She's growing up." I nodded, trying to fight the urge to protect her, knowing she deserved this chance to explore. An email from Alice brightened my day. She was engaged to a great guy who loved her kids. She invited us to her wedding in the States that summer, sending a picture of her family with big smiles in front of her bakery. "You gave me strength," she wrote. I showed Lizzie and she grinned. "We should go, Dad. She's family too." Alice's joy felt like our own, a reminder of new beginnings. The wedding plans came together and we finalized the guest list, including Genevieve's parents and friends. Lizzie practiced her maid of honor speech, filled with kind words and jokes, scribbled in a notebook covered with her drawings. "I'm going to make you emotional, Dad," she teased, and I laughed, knowing I would probably cry. The church in Montmartre seemed perfect for our new beginnings. Lizzie achieved a great victory when her essay for a Sorbonne contest titled Infidelity and the Fractured Family won first place. It was honest, reflecting her feelings from Julie's betrayal. During the award ceremony, she dedicated her win to Genevieve and me, her voice strong. "You taught me what family means," she said, her eyes bright. The crowd applauded, and I wiped away tears, holding Genevieve's hand tightly. Lizzie was healing, and so were we. One night, Genevieve and I stayed up late, dreaming about the future. "What if we adopted a child after the wedding?" she asked, her tone serious yet soft. My heart raced. It was both a big and wonderful idea. "Lizzie would be a fantastic big sister," I replied, imagining it. When we shared the idea with her, her face lit up. "I'd love that," she said, her smile bright and full of hope. "I'm excited to be the cool older sister." Her excitement made it official, and we started looking into ways to grow our family. Spring brought soft colors to Paris, the air filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers as our wedding day arrived. The little church in Montmartre shone in the morning sun, its colorful windows casting pretty patterns on the benches. Genevieve walked down the aisle in a simple ivory dress, her eyes fixed on mine, glowing with love. Lizzie, our maid of honor, stood next to her, wearing a sparkling navy gown and a proud smile. Sophie took photos, capturing every tear and laugh. Family and friends, Fignon, Elise, Genevieve's parents, filled the small space with warmth. As we exchanged our promises, I felt the burdens of the past lift, replaced by a bright new future we had built together. Lizzie's speech at the reception touched everyone's hearts. Standing at the head table, her voice was strong but filled with emotion. "Genevieve, you're the mom I always wanted," she said, her eyes shining. "You and Dad gave me a family again." The guests clapped loudly, many wiped away tears, and I held Genevieve's hand tightly, my heart swelling with happiness. Lizzie's words connected our painful past to this joyful moment, and I pulled her into a hug as she sat down, whispering, "You're my hero, kiddo." As we danced under twinkling lights, Lizzie tugged at my sleeve, her face becoming serious. "Dad, I saw Mom outside the church," she whispered. I turned to the window where Julie stood across the street, partly hidden by a tree, looking pale. She didn't move closer, just watched for a moment, then walked away. Lizzie held my hand tighter but shook her head. "I won't let her ruin this," she said firmly. We went back to dancing, her strength calming me. Julie's shadow lingered, but we chose to let it fade. My book on Renaissance patronage reached a big milestone when the publisher accepted my work, saying it would stand out in historical studies. Fignon called, his voice full of excitement. "You're going to present this at a conference in Florence," he said, making travel arrangements. The news felt like the perfect ending to my journey, proof that I had rebuilt my career in Paris. Colleagues sent me congratulatory emails, and I felt proud and grateful for the city that had given me this opportunity. Lizzie's relationship with Pierre grew more serious during a picnic by the Seine. He proposed, kneeling with a simple ring, his voice sincere. Lizzie, surprised, gently said no. "I'm not ready," she told him, her voice soft but steady. "I want to focus on my studies." When she shared the moment with me, I saw a maturity in her that filled me with pride. "You're creating your own journey," I said, giving her a warm hug. She smiled, her eyes shining. "I learned that from you, Dad." A week later, at breakfast in our apartment, Genevieve told us her big news. "I'm going to have a baby," she said, excitement in her voice. Lizzie squealed, almost spilling her coffee, and I held Genevieve in my arms as we mixed laughter with happy tears. That evening, we spent time thinking of baby names, with Lizzie insisting on something French and cool. The thought of a new child filled our home with hope, a sign of the family we had built together. Pierre's family didn't approve, looking down on Lizzie as an outsider. Their unkindness hurt her, and one night she came home with red eyes. "They think him not good enough," she said, her voice shaky. I sat her down, speaking calmly. "You are enough, Lizzie. You are loved, and that's what matters most." She nodded, drying her tears, and Genevieve joined us with her own stories of feeling accepted. Lizzie hugged us both, her strength returning. "I won't let them bring me down," she said, and I believed in her. Genevieve's pregnancy came with a few difficulties. Morning sickness hit hard, making her tired and pale. Lizzie and I took turns bringing her tea and keeping the apartment clean, our teamwork bringing us closer. "You're taking such good care of me," Genevieve joked, her smile soft but warm. Lizzie grinned, wrapping a blanket around her. "That's what family does, Maman Jeanne." Watching them, I felt a quiet strength in our togetherness, a love that could handle anything. A letter from Julie came, sent through a charity she worked with in the States. She wrote about her new marriage and her wish to rebuild her life, sending kind thoughts to Lizzie. Lizzie read it quietly before putting it aside. "I'm glad she's trying," she said softly, yet her tone felt distant. "But I'm done carrying her burdens." Her words hit me. It showed how much she had grown. We chose not to reply, letting the letter mark a new beginning for us. Lizzie's star shone brighter when she won a full scholarship to the Sorbonne, securing her education. At the award ceremony, she hugged Genevieve tightly, whispering, "You're my hero, Maman Jeanne." Genevieve's eyes sparkled with tears, and I cheered until my hands hurt, feeling proud of the woman Lizzie was becoming. Her success felt like a victory for all of us, proving our strength. Alice came to Paris for the wedding, bringing her new fiancé Tom with her. During dinner, she shared how her bakery was doing well, her smile bright. "You gave me courage, Sam," she said, squeezing my hand. Her joy matched ours, and Lizzie connected with Tom over stories of American desserts. "We're coming to your wedding," I promised, and Alice beamed, her happiness reminding us of how far we had all come. I sent the last version of my book to the publisher, who called it a strong contender for a bestseller in historical nonfiction. It felt unreal, a reward for many late nights and lots of research. At a faculty dinner, Fignon raised his glass to me, saying the book would change the field. I smiled, but my thoughts were with Genevieve and Lizzie, the true support of my success. Lizzie spent a weekend painting a mural in the baby's room, a cheerful scene of Paris rooftops under a starry sky. "I want my little sibling to grow up in the city of love," she said, with paint on her cheek. I hugged her, amazed by her kind heart. The room became a symbol of our growing family, a place for new beginnings. We celebrated our one-year anniversary in Paris with a party in our apartment, inviting Sophie, Pierre, and Genevieve's family. Lizzie surprised everyone by singing a French song, her voice bright and strong, bringing tears to Genevieve's eyes. Pierre joined her for a duet, their voices blending beautifully and easing my worries about the future. As we toasted to our year together, I looked around at the faces, our family, our friends, and felt a deep sense of peace. Paris had healed us, and the future looked bright. The summer in Paris was warm and golden, and our family grew with the arrival of Claire, born on a lovely July morning. Genevieve's labor was quick, and when I held our daughter, her tiny face framed by dark curls and her eyes like Genevieve's, I felt a powerful love that took my breath away. Lizzie, proud to be a big sister, held Claire close with a gentle touch that brought tears to my eyes. "She's perfect, Dad," Lizzie whispered, rocking Claire in the hospital room. Genevieve smiled, tired but glowing, and I knew our family was complete, a new chapter written in the city that had saved us. My book on Renaissance patronage became a bestseller and was translated into 5 languages. Invitations to speak at universities in London, Rome, and Berlin came in quickly. At a Sorbonne faculty dinner, Fignon raised a glass to me, calling me a scholar changing history. The praise made me feel humble, but seeing Genevieve and Lizzie cheering from the audience kept me grounded. This success was not just mine. It belonged to the family that had supported me through tough times. Lizzie's relationship with Pierre ended quietly during a meeting at a cafe near the Sorbonne. "I need to focus on my career," she told him, her voice steady. When she shared the conversation with me, her eyes were clear and determined. "I'll find true love someday, Dad, like you and Maman Jeanne," she said, squeezing my hand. I was amazed by her maturity, so different from the girl who had faced Julie's betrayal. I hugged her, proud of her strength to choose her path. Genevieve's career soared when she became a full professor at the Sorbonne, celebrated for her important research on the Reformation. At her induction ceremony, she stood proudly, speaking confidently as she thanked her colleagues. I watched, my heart swelling with pride, aware of the challenges she had faced: accusations, illness, and self-doubt. "You're my hero," I whispered as we danced at the reception, the music soft in the Paris night. She smiled, her hand warm in mine, and I felt our bond strengthen. A letter from Julie arrived, sent from the States. She shared that her life was stable now, working for a charity and married to a kind man who shared her values. "I won't reach out again," she wrote, honoring Lizzie's wishes. Lizzie read the letter quietly and then folded it neatly. "I'm glad she's okay," she said softly, "but I'm done looking back." Her words signaled the end of Julie's influence, a closure we had hoped for. I nodded, relieved to leave the past behind. Alice's wedding video call brightened our home one evening. Her face sparkled as she stood next to her new husband, Tom, in a quaint American chapel. Her children waved, grinning widely, and she announced that her bakery was growing with a new location. "You gave me hope, Sam," she said through the screen. Lizzie smiled and waved back, and I felt a quiet happiness knowing Alice had found her joy, just as we had. Lizzie's book deal was confirmed, her memoir set to be published next year. She dedicated it to me and Genevieve, her handwriting bold on the title page, "To Dad and Maman Jeanne, my anchors." When she showed us, Genevieve hugged her tightly, tears of joy in her eyes. "You're going to inspire others with this," she said. Lizzie, blushing with confidence, replied, "I just want to share our story." I admired her, my daughter who was transforming her experiences into art. We moved to a house on the edge of Paris, a lovely stone cottage with a garden where Claire took her first shaky steps, laughing as Lizzie chased her through the grass. The house was our sanctuary, featuring a study for my writing and a corner for Lizzie's sketches. Genevieve planted roses along the fence, her hands in the soil, and I watched her, my heart full. This was the home we had always dreamed of, built on love and strength. Lizzie graduated from her preparatory school with high honors, securing her place as a student at the Sorbonne. At the ceremony, she walked across the stage, her cap decorated with a history club pin, her smile lighting up the room. "I'm going to be a professor someday," she told me afterward, her eyes full of ambition. I hugged her, my voice choked with emotion. "You'll be the best." Her journey from a sad girl to a successful student showed her strength. Genevieve and I joined a local group helping families with relationship issues. We shared our story at community events, talking about trust, healing, and starting over. Our voices were steady as couples listened, some with tears in their eyes. "You're proof it's possible," a woman said, holding my hand tightly. "Helping others honored our past, turning our pain into purpose." Lizzie once joined us, bringing a calming energy to the room. I saw her as a strong, caring person. Alice emailed about Chad. He had disappeared to South America, cutting off contact with everyone. "Good riddance," she wrote, and I agreed. His absence marked the end of a chapter we had closed long ago. Lizzie shrugged when I mentioned it. She was focused on Claire's latest attempt to say, sister. Chad's influence, like Julie's, was no longer a part of our lives. Genevieve's family held a big reunion to celebrate Claire, filling our garden with laughter and music. Lizzie performed a poem she had written about Paris, its rhythm capturing the city's spirit, cobblestone streets, sunsets by the Seine, and our family's love. The guests applauded, including Elise, who wiped away happy tears. I pulled Lizzie close and whispered, "You're amazing." Her smile reminded me of Claire's, bright and innocent, tying our family together across generations. One quiet night, I wrote in my journal while the house was still, except for Claire's gentle snores. I reflected on our journey, Julie's betrayal, the courtrooms, our time in Paris, and Claire's birth. "I survived because I chose love," I wrote, my pen steady. "Genevieve, Lizzie, Claire, they're my home." It felt like a promise to the man I almost lost, but found strength instead. Lizzie's future looked bright when she secured an internship at the Louvre, working with Renaissance artifacts. "I'm going to make you proud, Dad," she said, her eyes shining as she described her first day. I smiled, my heart full. "You already have," I told her. Her path was set, a historian in the making, and I knew she'd share Paris lessons with the world. The story wrapped up on a calm evening in our garden, the Paris sunset painting the sky with pinks and golds. Genevieve sat beside me, and her laughter was soft as Claire moved toward Lizzie. My daughter picked her sister up, spinning her around in the fading light, their giggles mixing with the sound of rustling leaves. I looked at them, my wife, my daughters, my home, and knew we had found peace after the storm. Paris had brought us together, and our hard-earned future was bright.